Today we're going to be talking about consumers and utility rate making. My name is Roger Hall. I'm an attorney here with the department. My official title is Deputy Consumer Advocate. And as I'll talk about in a little bit, my division here is the division responsible for handling utility rate case issues. So again, we're going to be talking about utility rate making today. There are a lot of filings and issues that can affect rates, but today we're going to focus on what are typically called full rate cases. That's something where the entire rate structure for utility is impacted. So a little bit of an overview of the department here. We have a commission that oversees all of our activities. We have our administrator, Carrie Gruby-Leibarker. We also have a council of advisors, and we have 6 divisions. Again, I'm the division director for the advocacy division, and that's the one we'll focus on today. So a little bit more about the Consumer Advocacy Division. It was created by statute in 1978, along with the position of consumer advocate. The consumer advocate must be an attorney who's been admitted to practice law in South Carolina for a minimum of 8 years. Our administrator has typically been the consumer advocate, as she is now, and I'm, again, the deputy consumer advocate. So the advocacy division has a few core functions. Our first is to represent the consumer interest in, of course, utility matters, as we're talking about here today, but also with homeowners insurance and workers' compensation insurance. We also review various rules and regulations that are proposed by state and federal agencies. We'll submit comment letters on those if it's an issue that might impact consumers. And we also participate in various committees, including the State Health Planning Committee. So getting into a little bit of the utility rate making issues. Again, we were created in 1978, and from 1978 to 2004, we were the primary state agency involved in utility rate making. Back when it first started, this included everything from utilities to milk prices. As things progressed, we've begun to focus on electric, gas, and water. But in 2004, the legislature kind of restructured things a little bit and created the Office of Regulatory Staff. At that time, our role in utility interventions was removed. And the legislature also kind of changed up the roles of the Public Service Commission and the office when they created the ORS. Essentially, ORS became the investigatory body and auditing functions. We'll get into that a little bit more, and the Public Service Commission was sort of strictly hearing and deciding cases. In 2018, on the heels of VC Summer, our role to represent the consumer interest was restored by the legislature, but now we are sort of limited to the consumer interest, whereas ORS is the public interest. Again, I'll touch on that a little bit more as we get going. Just to show you here, the statute 37604, for those that are interested, lays out our new duties at the Public Service Commission, giving us the authority to intervene in matters that may impact rates, again, for the interest of consumers. Consumer interest is not actually defined in the statute, but the department interprets consumer in accordance with the Consumer Protection Code to be South Carolina residents who purchase utility services primarily for a personal, family, or household use. So again, just give a little overview here of all the different parties that might participate at the Public Service Commission. One, obviously the Public Service Commission. They are folks that decide the issues. Of course, you have your utilities, the Office of Regulatory Staff, the Department of Consumer Affairs, and other interveners. As a little bit of background about I guess, utilities and utility rate making, and this idea of the Public Service Commission overseeing it. For those that don't know, typically electric companies, gas companies, and water companies are given a sort of monopoly service territory. In exchange for that, they agree to serve, which means they are dedicated to the public use. They're supposed to charge reasonable rates and to be non-discriminatory. The idea here is that regulation replaces the free market. So by being subject to regulation, they agree to have their rates set by the Public Service Commission and abide by other rules and regulations the commission sets. The commission consists of 7 commissioners, and they're what is known as a quasi-judicial body. Quasi-judicial essentially is anything that is not an actual court, but that has been given powers and procedures resembling those of a court or a judge, and it has a responsibility to objectively determine facts and draw conclusions from them so that they can provide a basis for an official action. Here again, I've included statute language for anybody that is interested. It shows that the commission has broad powers to supervise and regulate the rates and services of every public utility in the state and to fix just and reasonable standards, classifications, regulations, and practices for those utilities to follow. One important note, I guess, is that the Public Service Commission's decision is not necessarily the final end-all be-all. Their decisions can be appealed, and typically their appeals go to the South Carolina Supreme Court. So, of course, the next important entity in utility rate making are the utilities themselves. Utilities include electric, gas, water, and sewer, but also telecommunications and transportation. The department, because telecommunications and transportation are regulated a little bit differently, they don't quite have the monopoly that these other utilities do, and there's a lot more choice for consumers. We typically focus our efforts on these three utilities. And also important to note, the Public Service Commission only regulates what are typically called investor-owned utilities. So that does not include things like municipal systems or co-ops. Co-ops are primarily self-governing, but the ORS and PSC do have some oversight on how they operate. And also municipal utilities are, again, self-governing and don't come under the jurisdiction of the PSC. And for more information about those, you can contact the Municipal Association of South Carolina. But here, what I am showing you is that in South Carolina, there are really only these electric companies. So Duke Energy Carolinas and Duke Energy Progress. Carolinas being in the upstate and Progress more towards the PD. You have Lockhart Power Company also in the upstate, and the Dominion Energy South Carolina. Even less natural gas companies that are investor owned. Dominion Energy and Piedmont. Piedmont is a Duke Energy affiliate. There are approximately 30 regulated water and sewer companies. Just giving you a few examples here. So, but again, this wouldn't include something like City of Columbia Water. So often we get asked about the difference between the Office of Regulatory Staff and the department. So I just want to start briefly with the differences here. Again, the Office of Regulatory Staff is an entire agency. They have their own auditors and investigators and internal experts, whereas Advocacy Division is one division within the Department of Consumer Affairs. Currently, there are 2 attorneys and 2 paralegals. We, again, represent the consumer interest, which we interpret to be residential customers, whereas ORS, their statutory mission is to represent the public interest. The public interest is defined as the using and consuming public with respect to public utility services, regardless of the class of customer, and the preservation of continued investment in and maintenance of utility facilities so as to provide reliable and high quality services. It's a mouthful, but essentially ORS is kind of meant to balance all the different customer classes, commercial, residential, industrial, as well as needs of the utility. And again, the department focuses strictly on the residential customer. The ORS is a party to every case at the PSC, whereas the department has discretion to intervene if rates are impacted. We'll get a little bit more into complaints later, but the Office of Regulatory Staff will take complaints about electric, gas, water, and sewer, and the department handles cable, telephone, and scam-related complaints. So finally, our last, I guess, party category at the Public Service Commission are interveners. Interveners can be a variety of different interests. We've seen municipalities, including cities, counties, and towns, cities, counties, and towns intervene. We've seen homeowner associations intervene. Commercial and industrial customers will intervene. This could be manufacturers. We've had Nucor Steel, CMC Steel, Walmart intervenes sometimes. Basically any company that might use a lot of electricity. That also includes the federal government. I think about the military bases that are in South Carolina. They use a lot of electricity and gas, so they have an interest in having their rates set as low as possible. See various organizations, including environmental and other special interest groups, This might be Coastal Conservation League or AARP. And of course, individual customers can also intervene. And I'll talk about that process shortly. So a little bit about the rate case process here. Familiarize yourself with it. So step one, obviously the utility will file for their rate increase. They do have to give 30-day notice of intent. So essentially they're telling the Public Service Commission that no earlier than 30 days from the date of filing, they plan to file an application. The PSC at that point will begin to set a schedule and a different timeline for the steps that have to be taken. And then at that point also ORS, the Department of Consumer Affairs, or anybody else that might be interested will start looking over those applications, start to identify issues, think about what witnesses we might need to hire or procure to present and help us address the various issues. A docket number will get assigned. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then step three, testimony is pre-filed. So the process of the Public Service Commission is very similar to a normal court case, but one big difference is that testimony is pre-filed. A lot of testimony, a lot of witnesses. We're working on a case right now. I haven't counted them, but there's probably about 40 witnesses. All that testimony will be pre-filed ahead of time so that different parties can review it and start to prepare responses and understand the positions of the parties. Step four, the hearings are held. We'll get into that. This does include the typical, like I said, a typical trial type hearing. There are also public night hearings where customers can come testify. The final step is the Public Service Commission will issue their order. The parties do typically prepare proposed orders, so we get to say, here's what we think you should, how you should rule and why. But then ultimately, the Public Service Commission does issue their own order. There's a chance for any parties to appeal, whether the utility company doesn't like the decision, they can appeal, or if another intervener doesn't like the decision, they can appeal it. And then finally, after all that's done, new rates will be implemented. So this is going to get a little bit into the weeds, but I thought important for you to understand kind of how this generally works. It's a very brief, high-level overview, but this is what the typical formula for determining a utility company's revenue. The rates are designed to allow the utility to cover their expenses, which are operating costs, taxes, and depreciation. Depreciation is essentially charging a portion of the cost of infrastructure. So if you think about it, if a utility company spent $10 million, typically a lot more, but say they spent $10 million on a plant. If you put that in rates all at once, your rates would be really high. So they typically would spread that out, say for a 10-year life, so they would charge $1 million a year for 10 years. So that's depreciation. Rate base is the value of all the infrastructure that they have, and they can only earn a return. So essentially, they have to raise money from shareholders. They expect to get a return on that. They only earn that return on rate base. Expenses are passed through. So this slide is just meant to show a little bit about what rate base is, using an electric company as an example. So again, kind of everything you can see, that is what's considered rate base, from whether it's the power plant, transformers, all the overhead lines, and all the distribution lines, anything they would spend money on, and again, they're allowed to earn a return on that. Give you an idea of how that can vary. A small water company, Palmetto Wastewater, they have an $11.5 million rate base, whereas Dominion Energy South Carolina has a $5.7 billion rate base. The other category of expenses, they're operating expenses, taxes and depreciation. This includes everything from salaries and wages, postage, pension costs, any materials or supplies or other necessary expenditures that aren't rate base related. So often get asked, why do utility companies raise rates? So let's go back. If they build new items in rate base or their expenses increase, they may come in and request a rate increase to cover those items. Definitely getting a little bit into the weeds here, but again, just to kind of understand a little bit of the process, this is using an electric company again. So essentially, they take all those various costs, they categorize them, whether related to generation or transmission or distribution, classify them, and then they allocate them to residential, commercial, industrial, or street lighting customers. So when the PSC hear from, again, these numerous witnesses, they have certain standards that they're supposed to judge the testimony and the request by. These are a few of them: fair, just, and reasonable, used and useful, reasonable and prudent. The way in South Carolina, the way things work, at least, is that utility companies are supposed to spend money and build things before they can recover it. So that shows the used and useful concept. We use a historic test year. So typically the year prior to them filing, they'll say, these are the things we built, these are the things we did, and what we want to recover. And they have to be reasonable and prudent. So a lot of our testimony is related to looking at those expenses. Did they spend the right amount of money? Did they overspend? Were the things they built, were those prudent investments? So these are the various types of issues the commission will look at. And we have two United States Supreme Court cases that kind of oversee everything that the commission has to decide. They're called Hope and Bluefield. And essentially, they say that a utility is entitled to an opportunity to earn a return on its investments commensurate with investments in other enterprises with similar risk. So again, getting back to this idea that regulation replaces the market, a lot of the lower level subsidiaries aren't publicly traded, so we look and see what do publicly traded companies earn, what ones have similar risk, and that's how they decide the return that the shareholders are entitled to. So we've talked about utility rate making process generally, as well as our role. Another responsibility that the department has is to report about rate issues to the public. This slide shows examples of outreach that we have done before, during, and after rate cases. We've also conducted various webinars with ORS. We have Facebook, Twitter, and Nextdoor posts about rate case applications, hearings, and results. This just shows some of the different things we've put out. So the main thing I wanted to talk about today was how consumers can be involved in this rate case process. Here are the 4 ways. Again, complaints aren't quite rate case related, but we'll get into that. But for the first 3 here, participating in public hearings, filing a letter of protest, or intervening. When a utility company does decide to file an application, typically with a bill insert, they will notify customers. The Public Service Commission and the parties look over what they call a notice of filing, and it's going to tell you what they plan to do, why they want to increase rates, and tell you about these 3 options. So keep a lookout for those in your bill inserts. I know typically people will just kind of get their bill and look at it and don't pay attention to everything else that's in there, but you might want to start paying attention. Also, if you're like me and you only get your bills online, you'll actually have to kind of go look for that. There is a section, at least with Dominion, titled Public Notices, that you click on that, and you will get this information if they filed for a rate case. So let's get a little bit more into the different ways you can get involved. The first is participating in a public hearing. As I mentioned in step 4 before, the Public Service Commission will schedule these for customers to offer testimony. They're usually held, they are all held in the utility service territory. They also might be held at the Public Service Commission itself, which is in Columbia. If there's a large service area, so again, Duke Energy Carolinas covers most of the upstate, they will schedule several of them so they can go to different counties and give folks a better opportunity to attend. They're typically held at 6 p.m. and in person. The ones in Columbia, they will recently at least have offered a virtual opportunity. Important to remember, testimony is given under oath, and the commissioners and other parties can ask follow-up questions. Those follow-up questions aren't typically adversarial, but they just usually want to maybe better understand what a customer is telling them. I will say, by participating in a public hearing, you do not become a party, but your testimony will become part of the record, and the commission can use it as a basis in its final decision. So just a few tips here for participating in a public hearing. They typically limit the time to 3 minutes, just to allow everybody an opportunity to be heard. So it is important to prepare. But first thing, you want to come early. If possible, try to arrive at least 10 to 15 minutes ahead of the scheduled starting time. The commission and Office of Regulatory staff give instructions during that time, so it's important to hear those. You want to pre-register or sign up. For the in-person hearings, the PSC does typically ask folks to pre-register, but they will allow people that walk in just to sign up that night as well. I will say the virtual hearings are sort of an ever-changing process, but typically once people sign up in advance, the PSC will call them right before their time so that they don't have to sit and listen to the entire time if they don't want to. I think most importantly though, number 3, prepare what you want to say in advance. You may want to write out the statement. It can be sometimes, especially the in-person ones, speaking in front of a large group of people, it can be nerve-wracking for some. So you want to make sure that you are prepared. Add your own experience. That's what the commission is there to hear. They want to. Every customer is unique. You might have quality of service issues. There might be something particular about your billing that's impacted you, your financial situation, whatever it is. But the commission really is interested in hearing from individual customers, and it does help in their decision making. Again, speak slowly and clearly, something I have a problem doing sometimes. So it's important for the commission to hear you. There'll be a microphone, sometimes people chatting in the background. So you just want to make sure the commission can hear you. I have had included on each of these slides links. If you'll notice, typically on green on the slides, but here there's more information available on the PSC's website, and I'll include some other links there for you as well. So your second option is to file a letter of protest with the Public Service Commission. Again, here with the green, that is a link to the commission's website for more information. But a letter of protest is another way you can share your concerns and objections to a rate increase. This, again, does not make you a party to the case, and these are not part of the formal record of the case, but they can be referred to as by other parties or the commission. A letter of protest can be submitted in a variety of formats, but there is I guess a template on the commission's webpage. You need to include your name and your address so that they know that you're a customer. They want to have a concise statement of your issue and whether you want to make an appearance in a hearing. Once you fill out this form, you can either print it and mail it in, you can email it, or you can fax it to the commission. We see, I guess, a range. I think some of the recent bigger electric utility rate cases, we might see a couple hundred letters of protest. Some of the smaller water companies, we might see 5 or 10, but the commission does review them, the parties do review them, and it does help us when we are making our case to the commission. So number 3, you can intervene as a party. This makes you an official party to the case. You do not have to be a lawyer, or you don't have to hire a lawyer. If you're a customer of the utility, you can represent yourself. You also don't have to hire experts or any witnesses. You can testify on your own. But what it does allow you to do, it gives you every right every other party has. You can cross-examine all the other witnesses. You can appeal the commission's final decision. But one important thing to note is that you do have to follow the commission's rules of practice and procedure. Those are available through their pro se litigant guide. There's a link there below. And the commission is with what they call pro se interveners, those that don't have an attorney. The commission's very good about kind of helping them through the process, especially once we're in the hearings. One thing I will note, there's some other links here. The PIN sign up and the publications, you can go on the commission's website, and instead of having to rely on getting those notices in your bill, you can sign up to get notices directly from the commission emailed to you when someone files a rate case or when our new docket's opened. And that link to seetv.org, nearly every hearing at the commission is streamed online, and you can go back and look at archived hearings as well. It's a pretty helpful website as far as finding older cases, and the pro se litigant guide there at the top is also has a ton of useful information if you do decide to intervene in a rate case. So if you do decide to intervene, or if you're just interested in other matters of the Public Service Commission, they have what they call their DMS, or document management system. Especially compared to some other states where we're trying to pull research, the South Carolina Public Service Commission has an excellent website. Right there on their I want to drop down, you can find a docket. If you know the docket number, very easy to enter it in, and you will see every filing that has been made, as long as they weren't confidential. Not going to go into a whole lot of detail about it, but it's a good way, even if you don't intervene or file a letter of protest and you just want to keep up with the case or see what they made a past decision on, you can go there. But wanted to give a little bit of a sort of a real world example of the different things that we just talked about. The Blue Granite Water Company rate case in 2019 was the department's first case after our authority was restored. In this case, we saw folks intervene. We saw numerous letters of protest, and we saw lots of comments during the public night hearings. We don't see a lot of individual customers intervene in rate cases, but we did in this one. Just to give you a couple examples. So again, we talked about municipalities, but in this case, the town of Irmo and York County intervened. The Building Industry Association, some homeowners associations intervened. Obviously, the company and ORS and Department of Consumer Affairs, and we had 2 pro se customers that were there. In aggregate, over 500 people attended the public night hearings, and 150 people signed up to give testimony. Again, we had 220 letters of protest filed. There was actually, I was trying to find it in my notes, but Blue Granite operates over 16 counties, so they held 6 different night hearings there in the case. And it really does, like I said, make a difference. On the screen, I won't read all this to you, but these are just some excerpts from the South Carolina Supreme Court after the case was appealed, and the Public Service Commission. But a lot of the testimony from customers was about quality of service issues. The commission noted that it considered those issues, and it gave a lower ROE, again, the return on equity, that's what shareholders get, in order to sort of incentivize the company to improve their practices. They also included some other incentives such as reporting requirements, different things to make sure they got their billing practices and sort of response times and other service issues up. Again, long quote here, but just to show this, the Supreme Court took note of that too, and they essentially found that it was justifiable for the commission to rely on customer testimony in making its decision. They noted that many of the customers testified about poor water quality, unresponsive customer service, inaccurate meter readings, billing errors, unwarranted cutoffs. They specifically mentioned some customers that had talked about their sewer line being plugged wrongfully, resulting in flooding of sewage in their yard and home, and other issues in neighborhoods. And like I said before, they cited that as the basis for the commission's decision and upheld it. So your testimony, letters of protest, and intervening can make a big difference. So if you're thinking about intervening or filing a letter of protest or attending a public night hearing, I just wanted to show you sort of the 4 active cases, the 4 active rate cases where you can do that right now. Duke Energy Carolinas is, again, if you're in the upstate, their public night hearings have started. One was held on Monday in Greenville. There's one tomorrow in Greenwood, the 16th in Seneca, 22nd in Anderson, and 23rd in Spartanburg. Actually, excuse me, it's 25th in Lancaster and May 20th in Columbia as well. You can find all that information rather than having to go back and listen to me rattle them off by clicking that link right there, the docket number 2023-388E. That will take you to a screen where you'll see at the top these various tabs. So you see at the bottom of mine, matters, orders, applicants. The far right there, if you click on timeline or hearings, you will find the dates for all those. Dominion Energy South Carolina also just filed for a rate increase. Their night hearings will be coming up. Let's see, I think they're starting towards the end of May and then continuing into June. Central States Water, that's at CSWR. Those aren't exactly true rate cases. They're what they call an acquisition case. But in case any of you live in a Silver Lake community or look up Forest Homes, I want to let you know about those, as you will be able to file letters of protest or potentially attend night hearings or intervene. I added this slide just to show that there are a lot of different matters that the Public Service Commission hears. We've been talking about what I refer to as full rate cases. There are only 11 full rate cases at the PSC since 2019. That's across water, sewer, gas, and electric. But as you can see here, there were about 300 filings related to those types of utilities from 2020 to 2022. A lot of these other cases can impact rates. Again, just not the full rate structure. So if you sign up for those notifications from the PSC, or if you go searching through DMS, you can see the different filings that have been made. Due to our resource constraints here, we typically only intervene in the full rate cases, though there have been some other issues we've gotten involved with, from energy efficiency, Duke Energy securitization, some electric vehicle related cases where consumers would be impacted as well. We'd love to get involved in more and help achieve more savings, but anything consumers can do to help us out by getting involved always goes a long way at the Commission in protecting residential rate customers. So finally, as I mentioned earlier, the last thing you can do is file a complaint. Again, it's not typically going to be rate related. It could be a billing issue though. So I did want to mention it. Again, the department will take cable and telephone related complaints or scam complaints, but the ORS will handle service and billing issues for those investor-owned utilities. Again, see the green writing there? That is a link to the PSC website that'll walk you through this process, but I'll cover a few points on the next slides. So these are the typical steps in filing a complaint. The first thing you do need to do is discuss with the utility. So the Commission and ORS are always going to want to know, did you try to resolve the issue with the utility first? If the utility cannot resolve your issue, then you file a complaint with ORS. And again, just kind of keep in mind investor-owned utilities, so not municipal-owned or co-ops. But ORS will take your complaint, they will investigate it, and they will make a decision or direct the utility company to take some sort of action. If you are not satisfied with the resolution from the Office of Regulatory Staff, you can file a complaint with the PSC. I will note that by filing a complaint with the PSC, you're requesting a hearing. Again, you do not, if it's directly related to your account, you do not have to hire an attorney, but they will essentially follow those same steps as a rate case. Well, they'll set up a schedule, they'll schedule a hearing date, and you'll be able to present your concerns to the PSC and request relief. If you want to do that, again, on the PSC's website, psc.sc.gov, drop on the I want to and hit file a complaint, and they'll walk you through that process. So again, I want to give a little bit of advice for if you do need to file a complaint. Some important things to do are just to include key details and copies of supporting documents. You'll want to let them know what you've done to try to resolve it. Again, contacting your utility company and the ORS, and let them know what you think would be a fair resolution. Just wanted to familiarize yourselves with the complaint form on the PSC's website. This is what they will ask you to complete. Again, obviously your name and address and other information, the type of complaint, whether you've contacted the ORS, and they'll ask you to provide some additional details about the issues surrounding your complaint. Just want to go a few more things about the department here. If you want some more publications, these are some various ones that you can call us or email us and ask for. If you want to get in touch with us, here's our Facebook page, our Twitter account, and our YouTube page. A lot of these presentations get uploaded to YouTube, so you can go back and watch them. And hopefully you've learned some things today and enjoy presenting, and wish you all the rest, have a good day. Thank you.